this up and down day wasn't from a pump site failure. It wasn't that my insulin went bad. It wasn't that the doctor put my rates in my pump wrong. It was purely a 100% human error on my part, or errors, I should say, plural. And just like one of those, you should know better, Lauren occasions. Welcome back, everyone, to Reclaim Your Rise. This is your host, Lauren. And today we're diving into a topic that doesn't always get the spotlight: how I handle low time and range blood sugar days. Now, if you follow me on Instagram, you often see maybe my CGM graphs when I'm in range after eating pizza or a bagel or tacos or sushi. And I do love showing what's possible and giving you that motivation and encouragement. But I also know that it's just important to keep it real and share what happens when things don't go as planned. So I wanted to record this episode because while it's great to celebrate those wins, it's equally important to be transparent about the challenges. We all have days when the numbers just aren't numbering, or the numbers aren't where we want them to be. And that is okay. Like, it doesn't mean we're failing. It just means that we're human. So I'm going to walk you through a recent experience I had with a low time and range day, what I was feeling, how I handled it, and the 5 tactical things that I do that help me move forward when the data isn't perfect. All right, so let's run it back to this past weekend, to a day that I was 50% time and range. And that is in comparison to my normal, like 80 to 90% where I sit at the majority of the time. So you can imagine this day did not feel too good. And I chose this day to highlight for this episode because this up and down day wasn't from a pump site failure. It wasn't that my insulin went bad. It wasn't that the doctor put my rates in my pump wrong. It was purely a 100% human error on my part, or errors, I should say, plural. And just like one of those, you should know better, Lauren occasions. And the thing is that with low time and range blood sugar days, no matter what the reason, it never feels good for us, right? In our bodies and in our minds. However, when there is a scapegoat, meaning it's the pump's fault or it's the doctor's fault, right? Like, it's a little bit easier to make peace with and move on from versus when it's self-inflicted. Right. So that's why I want to highlight this day. And I want to tell you a little bit about it. I actually have here pulled up my CGM graph so we can like look at some timestamps together. But background was I was in Florida for about 10 days visiting my parents, and they are snowbirds. So they have a house there that they're there for the majority of the winter. And even though it wasn't like a crazy out of routine trip in the sense that, like, I was at a hotel and I didn't have access to groceries, or we're, on vacation, like eating out every night. Like, it wasn't like that, but there were, additional factors. I'm working with heat. I'm working with, it was really hot. It was like 80 to 85 degrees every day. I'm working with different eating schedules, right? Like, my family, like, some days we were eating dinner at 5 o'clock. Some days we were eating at like 8 o'clock. It was, what are we in the mood for? When can we get a reservation? Or, maybe my grandparents or my aunt and uncle or Chris's family, who's also down there, is, coming over for a meal, and it's like around their schedule. So there was like a little bit of inconsistency from day to day, which is fine. And there was also more activity than I've definitely had in the last 2.5 months. Like, yes, I've started postpartum to go back to the gym over the past month, which has felt amazing. But when I'm in New York here, it's freezing cold, right? Like, I'm not walking outside and getting those extra steps. In Florida, I mean, I think I was outside more than I was inside, whether it was like taking Luca out in the stroller around the block, 2 times a day, or if it was, going into the town with my mom or my sister and, walking around and going into shops, right? There was just more activity. So there was, all of that, but things were fairly going well, right? Like, I know my patterns with a lot of those things, and I felt good. It really does feel good to, whether you're home or whether you're, in a different environment, to be able to navigate those different factors. So everything was good until Friday night. So Friday night, March 28th, my family was like, oh, there's this amazing Italian place. Of course, like, my dad, he's so good at, like, no matter where you are, if someone's like, oh yeah, the only place you can get good pizza or good Italian is like in New York or like, up north. My dad's like, no, no, no. Like, there is somebody in this state, in this area, from Brooklyn or from, somewhere in like around us, that like knows how to make good Italian food. And like, I will find them. So he found this place, shout out, Nunzio's in Naples, Florida. But the guy is from Brooklyn, and he makes this amazing, like truly like out of this world pizza. And so we had gotten it, I think, earlier on in the week when I was there, but then my sister and her fiance and my husband, Chris, came down and we were like, let's get it again. So we get it again, and we didn't end up eating until it was like one of those nights where it was like 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. And the night before, Luca was just he had like a really, really bad night of sleep. So I was really, really tired at that point. But we ended up eating late. And then I wanted to go to bed like right away afterwards. And I'm like trying to get Luca ready for bed. I'm like feeding him the bottle. I think I like, it was whatever, like took a shower, whatever it was. But like the time in which I ate pizza and then went to bed was like really, really quick. And I would say that usually I'm more intentional about thinking through those things and saying, hey, I'm eating later. If I want to go to bed now, like I definitely like let me do something with my pump in order to, just like cover the fact that I'm not, up for a couple more hours keeping an eye on it, or like I literally am, there's no activity happening, like I'm going to be laying down in bed. But I just wasn't. I was tired and I just ate the pizza, didn't really think it through, and just was like, all right, like we're gonna give the insulin and do the strategy that I always do, and go to bed. Well, from 12 a.m. that day until 5:30 a.m. the next day, I sat at 190 to 200. And I think it like literally was just under 200 because a couple of weeks ago, I actually changed my Dexcom alarm or on my phone to be 200 as the high, just because sometimes what was happening was like it used to be, I think, like 140. And if I was like 141, which is like not cause for alarm, like my automated pump will take care of that overnight. The alarm would go off, Luca would wake up because he's still in our room. And I was like, okay, that is not worth it. Like most nights I really stay around, 110 to 120. Like, if I'm high, like high, I'm gonna feel it and my body's gonna wake me up, because that's just like my body's like always kind of wakes me up in that sense. So like let's move this to 200. And so I'm pretty sure I was like 190 to like 199 and never hit 200 because I never got alarmed. And from 12 o'clock to 5:30, my blood sugar kind of like sat on that higher end. Now I do remember Luca waking up around like 3 o'clock to eat. And I did check my blood sugar and I gave some correction, but the fat must have still been at play from like the pizza the night before. And I just gave what the pump said. Once again, I'm like half asleep. I didn't give a little bit more buffer because I needed it. And I continued to stay and wake up. Then eventually when Luca woke up again at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, I still was, 190 because the automated pump wasn't giving me enough insulin. I need to give a manual correction. All to say, you might be listening to this and you're like, okay, Lauren, you're dramatic. I thought you were going to say you were like 300 and, that's more relatable. For me, I think sometimes in my body, at least, like sitting high overnight, no matter what it is, if it's anything over like 160, 170 for me, whether it's 190 or if it's 215 or if it's 230, I still wake up the next day feeling just like a muted version of myself. Like that's the best way to describe it. Like, of course, if I have a night where I'm like 250, 300, if something like crazy were to happen, right? Like, and it was like more of like a pump site issue and not like food related, I would feel horrible the next day, right? But like when I have those nights when I'm sitting at like 170, 180, 190, even though it's not like crazy high, that's still like 5.5 hours that I am, on the higher end, which I'm not used to. And that my body is just like dehydrated and just feels unalive the next day, and just like groggy is the best way to put it. So I wake up in the morning, and now that I've had 5.5, 6 hours of, being out of range to start the day, like it's fine. Like I'm not, and I want you guys to know that too. Like I really have gotten to a place with my diabetes and with my numbers where I'm not a perfectionist. Like the thing that drives my A1C below 6 and my 80 to 90% time in range is not because freak out at a 80 or 190 blood sugar. It's not because I'm like, and I know you know this, but if you follow me for a while, like it's not because I'm eating like salads all day and I'm at a place of like coming from decisions in life from a place of fear. It really is because I have learned my body's patterns so well with so many things, with hormones and food and exercise and, my mindset and relationship to food and relationship to diabetes, that it like has become just easier to hit those targets in a way that, yeah, just like it supports me and it makes me feel good. Like I enjoy feeling good. And so I wasn't waking up the next day like, oh my God, like I'm going to get complications from this and like hitting 190 for this many hours. I was like, okay, this is not ideal. I'm feeling a little bit tired. Like I'm groggy, but like, let's move on from the day. So now the day starts and let's look at this graph together. All right, 6 a.m. hits and I'm in range from 6 a.m. all the way until about 2:30 in the afternoon. And at 2:30 in the afternoon, I hit 69, it looks like. So I wasn't even really low, but I'm just using that as like a reference point because that's when like things started to go wrong. But we decided to play tennis at about, I think it was like 12 o'clock. I think we played from like 12 to maybe like 2:30. My family loves watching tennis, playing tennis. It's just something fun that we do. So they have courts at my parents' house and we were playing for a while. And the thing is that I believe on this day, I had like a very light breakfast at around 9 o'clock in the morning because obviously I was a little bit on the higher end all morning. I was still probably full from like pizza the night before. So I think I had a very light breakfast. And then by the time we got going to go to play tennis, I don't even think I had a snack or anything. So really, when we ended at about 2:30, my blood sugar was 69. When we got home, I was starving. Like I think I hadn't realized like, oh wow, we just like exercised for so long. I really haven't eaten anything all day. Like I just like the pantry opened, the chips came out, and it just where this is going. So when my blood sugar was already on the lower end, because I was playing tennis, the pump had suspended my background insulin a little bit. So I was already like, not having some background insulin. And then on top of it, I start going to town with these like red hot blue corn chips that I don't even know. Like I just, the bag appeared and my hand went in and we ate a lot of them. And there was no portioning out and there wasn't carb counting. It was just like baby is in my arms, trying to get him fed, feeding myself, and like not, once again, not making an intentional decision. And so I got some insulin on board. I think like everybody else started bringing out some like Italian bread and cheese, or it was garlic knots. That's what it was. It was garlic knots from the night before. I think I had like one or two of those. And I think I put down a protein shake as well. And so now from 2:30 till 4:30, the climb is starting to happen. So cue Miley Cyrus's The Climb, because that is the background song of my CGM chart right now. So I go from 69 to 3 o'clock, I'm like 120, to 4 o'clock, I'm like 170, to 5 o'clock. Now I've crossed the 200 line. And then at 7:30, it looks like I peak at 300. And so now I'm sharing, this was obviously like really, I hit a high point here. And so I was above 200 from about 4:30, it looks like, until 9 o'clock at night, because, right, throwing fuel on a fire is not fun, and not ideal. And that's what we did, because my blood sugar was already in the 200s, and then we were out eating. And of course, I'm going to participate in dinner if we're out eating, and my blood sugar is already high. And I had a lot of insulin on board. I remember it. But sometimes what happens is if you're eating like really not intentionally and with a lot of food, and you have that reduced background insulin because you're starting off low, like this is a very common chart that we see from our coaching members at Risely. And in this instance, I was one of them. I was victim to this situation. So I end up, sitting up there for a while. And then what happens is immediately all the insulin starts to hit at probably, yeah, like 8:30, I start to nosedive down. I remember seeing like double arrow down. I have like a full stomach because we just ate dinner. And now I'm tanking and I'm 50. And so I'm like 50, trying to get my blood sugar up. We had a little bit of gelato. That took a little bit to get up. I was like low for, it looks like, at least an hour, maybe even an hour and a half. And I wasn't 50 the whole time. It's hard to tell with like where the red is on this on my phone, but maybe I was around like 50 and then sat at like 60 for probably like a little bit. That was the day. And I think, it's frustrating for many reasons, but like I said earlier, it's frustrated because it's like, Lauren, these things. And I think if you were just more intentional, like this wouldn't have happened. And when I say more intentional, it doesn't always mean like more intentional in the sense like I wouldn't have eaten the chips, right? But it's more so like, hey, that like playing tennis and not eating a good breakfast and not having lunch essentially like is going to lead to you being starving. Like before tennis, have a snack, or come home and be like, all right, let me take 2 seconds to like have the chips, but let me also add on, give a little bit of a pre bolus, or, have more of like a salad with it or something with more fiber. So that is, the day that I had. while these days, truthfully, nowadays do not happen as often, they still happen and they still don't feel great. But I do have kind of these like five things that I always do after one of these tough blood sugar days that I will run you through so that hopefully you can take some inspiration for these, and on your next tough blood sugar day you can use them. And as I'm going through them too, like think about just like how you handle your high blood sugar days, and maybe things that you can adapt from this list or things that you're already doing. So let's get into it. The first thing that I do, and the first thing that whether it was like this specific day or let's just talk generally, right? Like, is hydrate. And don't underestimate this one, right? Like, drink lots of water after a day, specifically where you spend a lot of time high. And this flushes out excess glucose. It improves insulin sensitivity. It supports circulation, and it reduces the risk of like future stubborn highs that day. And that's because of like dehydration can cause blood sugar levels to like stay elevated longer because there's less fluid in the bloodstream to help regulate the concentration. So just like really drinking as much water as possible is like the first and just like low hanging fruit one that you probably know, but like I can't not say. So I do that. The second thing is I choose easier to bolus for foods. Yes, I am the self proclaimed queen of like eating pizza and tacos and sushi and ice cream and showing how I eat these foods because I want people to know that like these foods don't have to equal high blood sugars all the time. Like, if you are intentional, if you have like a tool set and you learn your body's patterns, like more often than not, you actually can eat these foods and have higher time in range. However, on a day after this, where my body's just been through like a little bit of a roller coaster, I'm not trying to like break any records. I just want it to be easy and I want to know that I can have a high time and range day. And so I will choose the salad or the lower carb option to get back on track. And there's no really like magic to this one, right? Like, it's really simple sometimes. It's like choose the healthier foods and the ones that are easier to bolus for. I guess like how I think of this is you have to think about what your priorities are and what you need to sacrifice for that priority. So when you're coming off a tough blood sugar day, the cooking and the eating at home and the choosing the salad may not be as fun, but like it's going to help you feel better and get you back to that place of feeling good. Specifically on the Sunday after this whole like Saturday mayhem thing happened, it was a travel day for us. We were flying back to New York, and I remember being at the airport and I just, yeah, like traveling with a baby, especially this is like only his second flight, was, it's a lot and it's stressful. And I remember going to get a water bottle at the, one of like the stands, and I saw all these like candies and chips and things. And I think might have just been a little bit like stressed or nervous for the flight. And I looked at those things and I'm like, I want I want that. I want Swedish fish. I want the whatever it was, the caramelized popcorn. I want that. And I literally was like walking towards it, and I paused myself and asked myself like, you know, in shifting the question from do you want this, which the answer was yes, and leading me to get the food, I asked myself like, how is this going to make you feel? And I was like, probably not great. And I could get a lot of insulin on board, but like still I'm going to have a swing at least up to like, 180. And I just don't want that. And I don't want to deal with it right now mentally. And I think that's the piece of it too. Like, why I choose easier to bolus for foods on these days after is because it's like, I just don't, I want it to be easy. I want to make diabetes easy as possible because mentally those days that are, you're swinging around like are draining. And so I ended up eating the less exciting baby carrots and hummus that I packed from my parents' house. And that travel day on Sunday, I was 90% time in range. And I actually pulled up, let me look at it here, my Dexcom Clarity. I was 90% time in range that day. And I'm pretty sure since then, which I'm recording this on Thursday afterwards, I haven't been less than 90% since that day. So that was just like, once again, like a singular day that happened where I was able to like get myself back on track and be able to repeat that in the days that have passed since then, but not because I haven't been eating carbs or not because I've just chosen easier to bolus for foods, but because it was like I look at Sunday as like a recalibration day, and then like Monday is like, okay, like get back to your normal. And it's definitely not like we've had like pizza every day or like hard to bolus for food since then, but I'm, eating my normal 150, 160, 170 carbs a day and, fueling my body, working out, and, getting back to just once again my normal, if you want to call it that. So that's number 2. The third one is to ask for help and to communicate. Gosh, there were so many times when I was growing up from the ages of, let's say, like 7 to let's call it like 22, where I had this thought in my head where diabetes is my burden. Diabetes is something that is my responsibility. Like nobody else really needs to know if I am having a high blood sugar or if I'm not feeling well or if I had like a crazy day. And what I learned from that was that it was more like my relationship to diabetes. And there was like a lot that I had to like work through and unpack there, because it actually is really helpful to communicate with my husband and my family and whom around that, hey, these are my blood sugars, because I am way more moody and way more irritable on these days and I need more. And that's okay. It's okay to be a little bit selfish. And that leads me to like number 4, which was like, once you're asking for help and communicating to say like, hey, I'm not having, great blood sugar day, I need, it's like you have to ask yourself, and this is number 4, like, what do you need? What is it that you need that you can advocate for and you can ask somebody else to help you achieve that's going to make you feel better? And if the people around you love you and support you, like, I'm sure they're going to say like, yes, like I can help you in that way. And so I'm often asking myself like, do I need sleep? Do I need movement, or do I need space? And sometimes it's a combination of all of those. Sometimes now, especially with a baby and being a mom, like it's not possible to get more than one. So I kind of have to choose, I find. But like asking yourself that helps then being able to articulate outwardly, like, hey, this is what happened. I'm not feeling great right now, but I know this will help me, even just a little bit of it. Like, can you, XYZ in order to make this, happen for me. Not every time is the same for me. Like it can differ. And I think the message that I want to share here with you is like, make sure whatever you choose, you're doing it from a place of love. Because I remember years ago when I would have a crazy day like this, my automatic would be like feeling so crummy the next day, but like going to do like the hardest workout of my life to like really like push myself. And I think it was rooted almost in a little bit of punishment of like, you went overboard yesterday with food, or you just like, your blood sugars went high for whatever reason. And now we have to like sweat it out and we have to like do 120%. And a lot of times what we need is to be a little bit more gentle with ourselves. And so when I'm asking myself, do I need sleep or movement, like I'm truly asking myself, like, what is it that is going to honor my body best? So do you need sleep? Do you need movement? And or do you need space? Because sometimes you just need to say, hey, like I need a second. Like please just like don't ask me, to question, don't, ask me to do the laundry. Sometimes it's like, don't talk to me because I'm cranky and I don't want to say something to you that I'm going to, regret. So that's number 4. And then the last piece here of what I always, 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 always do is and recommend is to reflect on what happened and why, because this is how we get better. And when we look at like why we don't do this sometimes, why we don't reflect on what happened and why, I find that it's because of 4 different reasons. So think through as I'm talking through them, which one you feel like you most relate to for maybe why you don't reflect as much on why it happened. The first one is because we want to just not pay attention to diabetes more than we need to, right? We don't want to take the time to write down. We don't want to have to journal. We don't want to have to think through it. We just want to like push forward and put it behind us. The second one is because of shame and guilt, right? There's a part of our brain where we want to pretend like it didn't happen because we feel guilty, especially if the high, or the low blood sugar time and range day is because of more of like an example like I shared where it was like self-inflicted, and it's kind of like you should have been more intentional, you should have known better. So we want to just pretend like it didn't happen. The third one is you feel like you know why you did it, but that it's just a you thing that you can't change. And personally, I believed this story for years. And now being on the other side of it, I can clearly see when somebody is also kind of battling this and it's keeping them stuck. But it's like, you almost think like, I do this all the time. This is just me. There's no way to change it. And so I'm just going to feel stuck in these like emotions of it. And there's no point in like reflecting on what happened because I know why it happened. However, for this one, I'm going to say you don't know why it happened because most times when we're looking at why something happened, we're looking on the surface and not beneath the surface. So I know we're talking about a lot about like, keep bringing up food as an example, but let's say you are, somebody who stress eats with chocolate, right? Like I'm making this up, right? But like you're like a huge, like, you come home from work, you're stressed. It was like a long day, you're tired. So like you're just gonna like dive into like, I don't know, like a candy bar, let's say. Like if you're thinking like there's no point in reflecting on what happened and why, because it's like you just came home from work, you were tired and you ate the chocolate bar. No, 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 no. Like that is not the reason. There are so many layers beneath that you need to understand are driving that decision. And that's more like a holistic way and kind of like what comes up a lot for people when you take time to journal and look at, okay, well, why am I coming home tired? Why am I coming home, exhausted, right? Okay, work's really long. Okay, like let's talk about work. Are we happy in work? Giving ourselves like breaks in between calls so we can just get, 5 minutes of fresh air, right? Like there's so many examples of this, but just going beneath the surface, you'll often find more than what you think, quote unquote, is the reason. And when you address those things, that's where real change can happen. And then the last reason I feel like we sometimes don't reflect on what happened with blood sugars is because you feel like you have a hard time figuring out why they happened. So it seems pointless. And what we see at Risely with like so many of our coaching members is them feeling frustrated because they don't think there is a reason for going out of range. Like they literally will come to sessions and be like, I have no idea. There's no patterns here. Like, it's almost like they want that affirmation that they're right, that there's no patterns. However, by the end of the session, or even just like, 10 minutes into the session, they're like, oh my God, I didn't think about that. Or, oh my gosh, yes, like that's the reason. There's these like light bulb moments that go off. And oftentimes you're not seeing it because you're too close to it or you don't know what to look for. And if you are only working with the tools that you were given at your diagnosis, you are limited in reasoning and assessing why your blood sugars might be doing what they're doing, because there are so many other things and other tools, let's say from your technology optimization to understanding your hormones to understanding your stress and sleep and your hunger hormones and exercise, different patterns. Like it's so much more than just what we learn from the endo. And that there is more often than not a reason that you can literally find for every out of range blood sugar, and going to the root helps you change that so that you're not making those decisions or those you're not making that happen more often than not. So sometimes it's just being honest with yourself, and reflecting really is like the root of getting to change and the catalyst, because you have to like meet yourself where you're at right now in order to build from there. So, in conclusion, a few things to remember here. First, just because one day didn't go well doesn't mean that everything is falling apart. Two, a tough blood sugar day isn't a reflection of failure. It's just data to use moving forward. Three, instead of spiraling, ask yourself what you need to get yourself to a place where these days are more rare than they are norm. And to this one, I will say, when you are in a place and you get to the place where you are in range, 75, 80%, 90% of the time, these days that you have, that I had specifically, where it was like all over the place, like, yes, it's frustrating. Yes, I don't feel good, but I'm able to make more peace with it because I'm able to quickly identify what the reasons were and understand what caused the out of range numbers. I'm able to kind of like calibrate myself back into a place of like, like that was like a weak point day, like get it together, Lauren, because I've done the work, and those things that used to be so hard for me to like work through with like relationship to food or not prioritizing my diabetes or not stopping to like give a pre-bolus, all of that, like this was just kind of like, I had like a default day, but It used to be things that like I really had to work through. And then really like, yeah, just knowing that like when they happen more like less frequently, it's easier to make peace with it, but it's also just easier to make peace with diabetes as a whole. And you're able to improve your relationship with diabetes because you feel more in control and you feel like, yeah, you're driving the car, you're steering the ship. And acceptance with diabetes is knowing that it's never going to be perfect. But when you are in a place of 50% time in range, 60% time in range, or even lower, right? Like you're having a lot of time where you're bouncing up and down or staying high or hitting those lows. And it's hard to look at diabetes and say, yeah, this is something that I have, but like it's something that doesn't bring me down. It's like, no, like honesty, it is bringing you down on a daily basis because you're not feeling the best that you possibly can, or you're not decreasing your risk for future complications. And it becomes this thing where it is harder to make peace with. So that is what I want everybody to be able to experience. But just know, like, closing this up, like every person with type 1 diabetes is going to have these days. Like, it really just matters how you respond, because beating ourselves up, feeling like we failed, telling ourselves diabetes will always be this hard and resenting it or spiraling only makes the experience of living with T1D harder. So focus on what you can do, whether that's hydrating, asking for help, communicating your needs, getting rest, getting some movement in, or like anything else that we talked about today. And then if you feel like you have blood sugar days like this and the one that I described, like more often than not, or if you find yourself always beating yourself up or feeling like a failure or spiraling into a cycle of frustration with your diabetes, and if you're tired of navigating this alone and want support and need support, this is exactly what we can support you with inside of our coaching programs at Risely. And specifically, right now, we are open for enrollment with our signature group coaching program for women with diabetes. We have had over 700 women come through this program over the years. We just wrapped up our winter cohort. That was absolutely incredible in terms of transformations and friendships made and community, not only in A1C and time and range lowering, but also mindset shifts and just reclaiming their diagnosis as a whole. And so if this is something that you've heard about before and you've thought about it and you've looked into, or if it's the first time that you're hearing about this, I'm going to link the link for the group coaching program in the show notes below. Apply to the program, talk to our team. This is something where you're going to find an extremely supportive community and tools and strategies specifically for you so that you can finally experience freedom and confidence with T1D. So this spring program starts in May. I believe we have 2 early bird spots still open before we shift into our, regular enrollment investments. But let me know if you have any questions, and we look forward to supporting you through the program. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I will see you next week, same time, same place.